Good morning. So today we are here with Kenny Brown and Britt Nicole. And I want to thank everyone for being here and making space in your day and in your heart for this important conversation. So today we are talking about something that touches every single one of us at some point in our life, and that is grief. Grief is a deep, multi layered experience, but specifically with childhood cancer, we're going to talk about how that impacts the families, the parents, the children, and ultimately their community at large. And we know grief is something that we do not talk often about, um, but especially when it intersects with mental health. So we're going to bring in mental health. We're going to talk about grief, childhood cancer, and also community work, because this is why we have Kenny Brown and Britt Nicole online. And so I would love for them to introduce themselves. And so, Mr. Kenny, would you like to go first?
Sure. So good morning. I am Kenneth Brown. I prefer Kenny. I really don't know why. It just sounds more cool to me. Kenneth makes me feel like I'm in trouble sometimes, but that is my government name. I am a civic engagement and community worker. 20 plus years of nonprofit experience. I have worked with almost every underserved population there is. I've gotten a chance to see firsthand what grief does to community, what it does to families, what it has done in my personal life. And so I'm just happy to be here and get together with you guys to talk about something that everybody goes through. In my downtime, I do spoken word. I'm a writer. I do a whole bunch of other stuff. But today we are focusing on the topic at hand, which is grief and recovery.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Kenny. So glad to have you on. And now, Miss Britt Nicole.
Hello, everybody. My name is Britt Nicole. I am a spoken word artist, award-winning author, published author, host. I'm a builder, healer, and connector out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I've been working in youth development for over 20 plus years, working within the communities in different capacities, serving. Grief is very, it hits me in a personal space, and I have a writing workshop called I Want to Write Right Now that focuses on grief on the stages, and then just how are we navigating through that as a community, as well as like just for our individual, like, toolkits, right? Internal toolkits for when it hits us out of nowhere, because that's exactly what it does. And I'm excited. It feels weird to say that you're excited to have a conversation about this, but I think the more that people gravitate to this conversation, and the more they know, then it's helpful for themselves, as well as how do I serve myself and I serve others throughout this process, throughout this continual processes, And so I'm excited to hear what everyone, has to offer throughout the conversation today.
Awesome. And of course, I'm Kanisha Henderson. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and licensed massage therapist. I am the owner and pretty much the therapist for Whole Root Healing LLC. And also, I am the mental health advisor for Jacob Way. And so, yes, we are going to jump into this conversation. I'm also excited because, like you said, it's weird to say you're excited about this, but at the same time, it's not talked about enough. And we know people need communities. And I really hope that this is a community discussion for our childhood cancer individuals who are experiencing childhood cancer and the families, but also, our community at large, because sometimes people don't understand specifically what childhood cancer does to families and how it impacts them. And so we want to bring that awareness forward today. And yeah, we're going to get started. So the goal today is to just break that silence and actually incorporate some honesty, compassion, and connection. So, what is grief? And especially after COVID-19, I have to bring up the pandemic because that has it's literally changed the grief process for so many people, whether it was virtually in person, but also when it comes to childhood cancer, that's a very compromised community and a vulnerable community. And to go through a pandemic and also have certain diagnoses, oh my goodness, there's
Yeah.
so many layers to that. So, what is grief? Typically, people hear it as a loss of a loved one, but we know that it is much more than that. We grieve the loss of a friendship, community, dreams, jobs, meaningful activities, and childhood cancer. That meaningful activities kind of go out the window because the focus is care and making sure that child is their healthiest self and to provide everything they need. So there's a premise I want to bring in. There's a grief specialist named Francis Weller that came up with 5 major gates that we experience when we have grief. And grief, again, is more than when we have a loss of a loved one. So, what are those 5 stages? That is everything we love, we will lose. It's just a fact. Everything that we love, we will lose. Number 2, places that have known love. Now that's a piece that's going to be very multifaceted because what does that mean? While our differences are real, we lose sight of what we have in common, and that's the need to feel loved, respected, and supported. And so that is another layer of grief that some people don't acknowledge, especially with childhood cancer, because people can feel very isolated and alone and not understand what people are really missing or see as respect in that realm. Now, 3, the world at large, the sorrows of the world. And during COVID-19, we saw a lot because everybody was sitting at home on a screen, but also we didn't see a whole lot. We saw a lot of sorrow even today with social media. We have so many different aspects where people sometimes can't breathe because the moment they open up their phone, they're triggered.
Yeah.
They're sent back into a whole nother grief process. But then we have what we expected and did not receive. And we know
Mm.
if you have a child, you see so much for their future. You see weddings, you may see them going to college or starting a business or just simply being an adult sometimes and living their lives, right? But if we don't receive that actual expectation, what happens, right? There's a whole grief process with that.
Yeah.
And the last point that he made was ancestral grief. And this is that interconnectedness with our ancestors. And basically, anything that they experience, it has filtered to us. And so, those traumas, whether it's violence, genocide, racism, that also impacts the grief process. Um, so, now that I've tapped into what grief is and the different facets, the first question: how have you seen grief impact your community? And specifically, if you've known in regards to children, how has that impacted your community and what have you seen?
I can start
Okay.
from working like deep in the community. It's a lot of sorrow and it's a lot of anxiousness because of like an exhaustion. Folks are tired, right? They're not getting the answers that they need. They're not being, even when they're led to resources, it feels like a needle in a haystack. It's not specifically, you need to talk to this doctor, you need to go to this clinic, this, facility or institution has the best options for you. Folks are not, a lot of them are underserved because they don't fit the bill, like they can't get the what they need. And then it just creates another layer of despair. Um, and then on top of that, there's a lot of hurt, even spiritually, because in their mind, especially, when it comes down to a child, I wanted this child, we've been praying for this child or, whatever. And then all of a sudden, now the clock has really started because we're fighting for time.
Yeah.
Mm.
God, where are you? Right. And then that makes, so if they're now questioning their higher power, then they're questioning everyone around them, right? Why is this happening to me? And so, like it's all this comparison. Um, and it just causes a lot of discord. So folks are becoming more isolated, right? Because the trust factor isn't really there. They don't know the right questions to ask sometimes. For them, for most of folks going through it, it's their first time enduring something like this, right? And no one's helping them navigate. So I've seen a lot of just confusion. And then on top of that, they're feeling kind of defeated. Like, I want to ask the questions. I don't know how to ask them. I don't really have an advocate, especially in healthcare. And so people are being talked at versus being talked to. So it's a lot of layered emotions, right? And you don't know what you're about to encounter when you speak to them. You might ask a question, I've gotten tears instantly. I've asked a simple question or what I thought was simple, and then all of a sudden someone's anger, like you said, being triggered. And so it's so multi-layered. And that's why you have to just kind of stay in a place to just kind of be open to receive. Like, I need to see what your emotion is so I can go up here and narrate this importance of why we need to be meeting needs more, right? So.
Yeah.
No, I agree. You know what? I look at it in community. So most of the work I do, when you serve one at-risk population, you serve them all because there's such a co-occurrence that occurs when people are hurting or going through a process, right? And so what I've noticed is in community, grief isn't talked about a lot, especially at the level that I get to see it from up close and personal, because you have to be vulnerable. And people always view a vulnerability, or most of the times view vulnerability as a weakness, right? So you don't want to walk around in the community and be weak. You don't want to be looked at with pity. You don't want someone to be able to see the things that you might not be able to change. I've seen it impacted in that way when I've worked with people who have lost loved ones, especially to disease or lost children. They're looking for the reason why, right? And they're trying to explain away the frailty of life with some type of reasoning or some type of logic that does not really exist. And I've often had to say, blame won't make it better, but what you believe in can make it bearable, right? Mm-hmm. Even if you find someone or something or some entity to blame, it will not change what that is. And it's not necessarily something that we can get through. It's something that we have to embrace, actually, which is why when we were talking in the intro about being excited about talking about grief, I'm not happy that anyone has to grieve, but I know everybody has to grieve. And I'm excited to talk about that because we need to have the conversation. You feel so isolated, you feel so alone. You don't want to express this emotion. You don't want to be looked at as soft. You don't want to be looked at as somebody who's in need. You don't want people to know that you're hurting. And you got to be anchored to something that you can lean and rely on so that you don't just move with the tide of how you feel. And I think that when we give people that, when we have conversations like this, when we open up the floor to talk, have conversation, like Nicole was saying, be open to receive, then we can start to make an impact and not try to rush people through a process that is a lifelong mission.
Yeah. Because it's not a rush process.
Yeah.
And let's talk about that a little bit. The process, sometimes people think, well, why are they still this? Or why are you still that? And there is no time frame on grief.
No.
When I talk to my clients, I explain to them everyone's timeline, like in all facets of life, we all have our own timelines for growing, developing, and especially grieving. And so you all touched on some very good points. Underserved communities, right? Needle in a haystack resources, right? Sometimes you get bombarded with so much information, fighting for time, higher power, questioning everything around you, right? There are so many facets to being able to manage your grief. The question is, how do we manage our grief, right? What does coping look like? What is versus culturally coping? Because when we talk about underserved communities or even childhood cancer, where people may not be completely attached to that in any form or fashion, culturally there's going to be a different type of coping that comes along with that. And again, we talk about how people coped 10 years ago versus now.
Yeah.
So many different realms with that. And we tapping into rituals, traditions, practices of managing grief or not feeling stuck in grief. Because again, there's no timeline for grief, but there is something called chronic grief where people are just overly consumed with it to the point they don't see anything else in life. And so let's talk about the different layers of how do we cope, how do we manage all of these pieces of grief and not necessarily get stuck in the fact that this is all that I have right now.
You know what? And I'll speak from personal experience for a moment. So for me, coping was very difficult because of the work that we do. And I'm speaking on behalf of Britt Nicole. She's like my work twin. We got like some of the same stuff on our resume. It's awesome. But because of some of the work we do and the way that I express myself, spoken word or writing or connecting with people, initially when I started to go through, when I understood that I was allowed to grieve, first off, right? Because one of the biggest myths is that you are not allowed to grieve. People say you'll get through it. You don't get through it, you go through it, right? Like it's not something you'll ever get over because the person you were before whatever incident occurred is not ever going to be the same person you are now because everything has changed, right? And so you got to create a new normal. And you have to understand how to walk in that first. Like you got to accept the fact that this is not attainable. And that's okay. That's okay. And you have to start to really understand what coping looks like. Oftentimes when people don't have a support system, when people don't know which avenues to walk down, it turns into drinking, it turns into isolation, it turns into drug use, substance misuse, it turns into at-risk behavior, which creates a whole different set of problems. But what that allows people to do is to not focus on what's hurting them, right? And I had to realize that although what I felt in grief was individual, I couldn't allow it to isolate me because somebody does their best work in isolation. So the more I was alone, the more I wouldn't allow people to love me, the more I wouldn't allow my support group to support me, I was setting myself up for failure. And I was creating bad memorials. Everything was an anniversary of something, of what I lost. I focused so much on what I lost that I didn't realize what I loved. And I had to switch my mindset and my perspective. So coping oftentimes looks like allowing yourself to understand that you can go through grief and you might not just get over it. But once you get into it, you'll understand how to navigate that better. I lean more into the writing. I lean more into doing things and serving others. My pastor always says, if you're in need, sow a seed. So for me, it took me to get up, get dressed, get out there and help somebody else. And that was meaningful to me because it helped me understand the process of what I was going through. Community support is a huge thing. When you have community and you have people with you and you can be a part of that, it creates a whole different dynamic for you. It says in like Galatians, carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. And so for me, I had to realize that I was not isolated. I was not alone. If I'm talking to you, Kanisha, you, Brittany, I'm talking to you all, and we can empathize and talk. It makes me feel better because now I can share this, and we have something that connects us instead of something that separates us. So.
I love that response. I resonate with that. So when I lost my mother almost 8 years ago, and I'm an only child too, so. And I'm big on Village. Kanisha's one of my closest friends, and so, I'm extremely close to my mother, and so it's a perspective change. And for a long time, I believe that people would never see my light again, and only saw me as damaged goods, someone trying to keep herself together, right? Like I make pain look good, or I make struggle. Sometimes we just don't even realize it, and it's just like, you're going through it, but you don't even look like it. It's like, oh, okay, cool. But in our mindset, it's like how we perceive ourselves or how we perceive others to see us and interact with us. And, and so it's like, I don't want someone coming with this sad, oh, I'm praying for you, or it's just always like, hey, we're just here to go to a movie. I don't even want to unpack that. Or they feel like I'm always wanting to unpack and they have to be the person. And so you also have to create these boundaries for folks, even in good nature, right? I have heard things from people saying like, who didn't know necessarily, because I lost my mother to cancer, oh, but how, or how did, I'm like, why does that even matter to you? So protecting yourself, because people come in with some of the best intentions, but the execution is poor. And it falls flat. It's not well received, so it's like, okay, I want to believe that you're not coming from a malicious place. It's just kind of what we say, like things to say when dealing with death, things to say when dealing with grief, are you checking on me to say that you checked on me, or are you actually checking on me for the sake of checking on me? And then I feel like learning what coping mechanisms work for you is like being a freshman in college. They say, like on average, like you change your major about 5 or 6 times. And that's just it, right? Because in your state, you're trying to figure out how to meet immediate needs for yourself. So it could lead you to at-risk behavior, right? Because all I really want is some relief right now. I don't want to think about this stuff. I just need a detachment. And so we find ourselves clinging to those things that's going to detach us, that we know is like, I don't want to think about this, even if it's for 5 minutes. I know this is going to get me what I need. It's when I keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And it becomes into a pattern, right? Unhealthy behaviors. They tell you to go shopping, treat yourself. But then all of a sudden you use that all the time. Now your bank account is low, like the result of. So having a healthy balance for yourself. And then we haven't talked about therapy, especially in the Black community, as much as we are now. But a decade ago, maybe almost 2 decades ago, it wasn't even fathomable, especially for Black men. Black women got on the train and we was like, okay, we're going, right? But, still not being safe enough for Black men, or just this stigma of, what's happening in-house stays in-house. And that's the problem. We have to be in spaces that I shouldn't have to tell you, Kenny, this is a safe space. Because if you don't believe it to be, then it isn't. It doesn't matter how many times I say it. If you don't feel it, the fact that someone has to even say that this is a safe space lets me know that there's a good chance that it's not, especially if I'm not receiving it. So how can I even be open to cope when I'm not even feeling safe in the space that I'm in, that is supposed to be designed to help me cope? Whether it be individual therapy, group therapy, because even with therapists, like, even as a massage therapist, folks sometimes have to do consultations until they find the right fit for them. Not the first thing that they see. They have to make sure, do I connect? Do I gel? Am I seen, heard, and valued? Because we're already questioning that for ourselves. So are we in the spaces to have that? So there's so many different dynamics, even trying to cope, because you're just trying to get through the day. And you're trying to show up if you're a parent, if you're in a partnership, if you're in work or whatever. So not only am I trying to show up for myself and do all this, I still have to show up and be a supporter of all these other things. I can't just disregard my responsibilities and my contributions to whoever, because we have goals to meet and we all are trying to get through the day. So it's like finding what's right for you in a healthy manner, though. And making sure that you're upholding your personal boundaries to keep yourself mentally and emotionally and even physically safe.
Ooh, awesome. Ooh, so many good points to touch on. I love all the feedback. You all touched on some really good points. So avoidance / awareness, right? How do we address the bereaved? Whether they have actually lost a child, whether they have just got a diagnosis, a fresh diagnosis, and don't know where to go. How do we address people who are grieving, or simply grieving, like I said earlier, the fact that you're not going to do the expected things, right? So what else? Perspective change. Grief. Ooh, it changes your perspective. That's a huge one. And community support. That's a huge one I want to tap into, because the reason I brought COVID-19 in and the pandemic and all of that is because people really lost a sense of community. They lost a sense of community, and it was more on virtual platforms where people had to kind of find their communities in certain lights. But let's talk about some of these pieces. Addressing the bereaved. No judgments, no opinions. Just start there. Show empathy. And some people don't know how to show empathy. It's very, I have learned over the years of doing therapy, people really don't know what to say. They don't have the words, they don't have the vocabulary, they don't know where to start, end, or begin. And so I always recommend, no matter what type of grieving process someone is in, whether they just found out a diagnosis, whether they have actually experienced the loss of a loved one, or all the in-betweens. Maybe you had to stop working because your child got cancer, right? Maybe you have to stop, like you said, daily routines. You got to prioritize. What is the priority of the day for me to just make it? And when people walk, oh, sometimes people ask, what do you need? Sometimes they don't know what they need in the moment either. Right? Because at the same time, sometimes, like you say, you're trying to avoid, you're trying to isolate, you're juggling a lot of factors of emotional dysregulation is what we call it. And so again, no judgments, no opinions. Explain how you can show up. And Brittany, you mentioned something very key, boundaries. Boundaries on all sides. How do we protect ourselves? So even the people that want to be supports and want to come in, you have to know how you can support. You can't say, oh, I want to do all these things, but then you don't show up, because then that trust factor just goes out the window. So one, know how you can show up. Ask people, how can I show up for you? Or what do you need in this space? And I think, I can't remember which one of you mentioned it, but you know, if I just want to go to the movies, just check in with me. Okay, what we doing today? Are we checking in about the movies, or are we checking in about where you at right now? Let me know what you need. Because sometimes that's just the easiest thing to do, is just, what do you need in the moment? Do you want to talk about it? Do you not? Okay, let's go that direction. And having a steadfast presence. Oh my goodness, community. When everybody is hurting and going through, how do we still have community? Isolation doesn't help. It just doesn't. It can be very helpful for the moments when you need to process for yourself. But the moment your mind gets to overthinking about certain things, this is when we need to pull other people into our lives and actually say, okay, you know what? I am immersed in my grief. I have not laughed in months. I have not seen what light feels like. I need to actually embrace the communities around me. So coping and rituals, that is another big thing when it comes to grief. What type of rituals can you incorporate? Sometimes we've had rituals traditionally in different communities, whether in church communities or medical communities. And I'm going to bring up a topic and I'm very curious. Latour is watching in the background. I'm kind of curious what happened when Jacob passed, because I've just learned in the last couple of weeks that some hospitals will send a blood tube vial with a heart script in it, basically like the heartbeat paper inside of a blood vial, and send like a condolences note to people. And I'm so curious, have you all heard of that? Because apparently this is a thing in hospitals, that they're making a ritual to, I guess, send their condolences to families. But whew, what I'm hearing from people, it's a lot of triggers with that.
I think Britt Nicole touched on it when she said it was likened to intention versus impact, right? Like, you can intend to be very comforting, very supportive, but the impact of that is different, because what somebody going through oftentimes is not connected to what you're giving them, right? And so allowing people the space to exercise their own humanity, to exercise their own emotion, and the freedom to do that. Like you said, Britt, is this a safe space? that shouldn't be a question, right? It should be a safe space. And so when we ask that question, that's because societally we are not given safe spaces in general. So no space for us is ever safe. So having to ask that is wild for me sometimes when I think about that. And when I was a kid, I used to get in trouble because I would go to sleep with the TV on, and you come in there and the TV is on mute, but just knowing that something was there with me gave me comfort. Oftentimes, support looks like being that TV on mute for somebody, not trying to impose what you're doing, not trying to push your agenda on them, but just being in the background on mute. And if they need you, they can hit that button and be like, hey, I need this. But just being available, and I often hear availability is the best ability. Just be available to people. That is one of the biggest ways I've received support, because when my mother passed, it was 3 years ago now, somebody asked me, like, what can I do? And so my immediate thing, because I was so emotional, I'm an emotional guy. And so my immediate thing was like instant rage, right? What do you mean, what can you do? Can you tell God to give her back? Short of that, there's nothing that you could do. And I realized in an instant that was the wrong response. I didn't say it, but I thought it, right? And so I was going through that, and that's when I was like, you know what? Thank you for asking. Thank you for being available. Because it takes a lot to be supportive of someone who's grieving. And when you talk about childhood cancer, I've known people who've lost children to cancer, and it is a different type of grief. It is a different type of conversation to have about the loss of a child, let alone to cancer itself, the demon of that, right? There's no fairness. There is no justice in cancer to anyone, especially children. Children are so light. Children are so innocent. Children are our joy. They're our hope. We place our future and our legacy in our children, and we put so much onus on their life. You can look at any social media page, and you see all these kids up and down. Kids do stuff that's not even amazing. Look, this little KB Jr. blinking. Like, he's blinking his eye. But people put so much of their pride and their self into their children. So what do you say to someone when that is stopped prematurely? Circumstance does not negate the sovereignty of God. God is still who he is, no matter what we go through. It is a hard and a tough pill to swallow, but it is the truth that has helped me start to not get over it, but get through it. And if I could give any type of support, any type of personal experience or context to what that looks like, oftentimes it looks like being that TV on mute when you're helping someone through grief, but it also looks like whatever you believe in, clinging to make sure, like Britt Nicole said, that you don't completely stop being who you are because of what has happened. And it's not personal. I personalized the grief like there was an attack against me. I would ask God why. I would talk to people and say, why did he do this to me? And it was like, it is not personal. I had to realize that life and death is God's business and God's alone. And if I believe in him, if you believe in whatever you believe in, like you say you do, you have to understand that that is the way. Kanisha touched on in the beginning, what you love, you'll lose. So it became paramount for me to treat people better, to be intentional about what I gave attention to make sure that I represented my true self when I was encountering people, because this could be the last time. The pain gave birth to a purpose within me that I honestly wouldn't have ever gotten had I not lost something. And that is the maturity of understanding how life looks and what that looks like. So support can look different, but I would just say, if you're trying to support someone, be available to them in whatever capacity you can.
I love the response. There is so much value in Village. There's so much value in Village, and Village can be your first responders. And I'm not even talking about an actual first responder, but the ones who just like, as they're working too, it's like people are already on standby for you. Okay, I'm going to meet you at the hospital. Okay. That person's going to need to eat. Somebody better go, like, I'm already cooking, or pick something up, like just people already just doing, right? Because It's me bringing my offering. It's what I can do. I can do well. It's not taking me away from anything else, like it's not making someone solely the priority where nothing else matters, but I can offer this portion of myself in your time of need because that's immediate, right? And then how I can serve afterwards. So like imagine you and your child are at the center, like there's a little heart and then there's rings around those. So like family and then neighbors or community or village in whatever. And everyone is centered around or surrounding this family, this child. We don't want to talk about infant mortality. We don't want to talk about child mortality. No one wants to talk about children dying. The unfortunate thing is this is a reality for folks. So how do we stay sensitive and cognizant to that and really support? Because sometimes things are just flat out, no one wants to hear there's nothing else we can do. And sometimes in those institutions, especially in healthcare, the jargon is so common for those who work in those areas so like when I was in the hospice with my mother, I'm standing outside her room and I could hear two nurses or whoever talking saying she's actively dying. And I'm thinking like, who are they talking about? Are they talking about my mother? And because they just said it because this is just how they talk. That is literally their language with each other. They chose this field for a reason. They know what it takes. They can't get as emotionally involved. It's different because when you're on the receiving end as the family member or whoever, someone close, relative, what have you. I don't think that they're initially trying to be insensitive. This is just naturally how they communicate. Because again, they have to keep things moving too. Because if everybody just gets emotional, falling apart, nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to be carried out as it needs to be. I also love that analogy, Kenny, when you said about just being like, just, the TV, right? Just on mute, but I'm available to you. And just know that if you don't say anything for weeks, I'm still available to it. People are more receptive when it's an invitation, feeling like more than forceful. Like if you're forcing your love on me, I don't receive it well. So Kenesha knows I host this thing called Friendsgiving. Sometimes I do it multiple times a year, whatever, but I started it because when I am deeply into Village, but I've also have really bad anxiety. Too much love kind of I get overwhelmed very quickly or overstimulated. So I started doing Friendsgiving to bring all these people together for a game, for a day party. So we're going to play games. We're going to eat good. People, potluck, put in something, whatever for it. We're going to just lay your burdens at the door. We're here for a few hours. If you want to come in and out, I would open it from like 6 hours so you can stay the whole time, 2 minutes, 20 minutes, go do an errand, come back or whatever. Just all we need is your authentic self. That way people can love on me in small doses where I can receive it better versus feeling all these people trying to overwhelm me. They're all here, one, to support me, which is great. But two, they also are here because they're in need of something too. They're in need of community for the things that they don't speak about, for the things that they are going through. They need a break. Like, and that's a healthy thing, right? Just bring it together. Like we're going to play some games. You're going to meet some folks. You're going to reconnect with some folks or whatever. And then you're going to go about your business. And it was very low, low lift. All we needed was you and your contribution. And so when we provide spaces like that, like we're good at, and I always keep going back to meeting needs. I treat people how I want to be treated. So sometimes if I have to convey what I need, I'll convey what I don't need. I am someone who loves hugs. Physical touch is one of my top 2 love languages. But when my anxiety is really, really bad or whatever like that, I don't want anyone close to me. And if I allow someone to get close to me, that is a trust factor. It doesn't mean I love anyone less. It's just that person has the green light or I trust that person that even when I'm in my bad mental state, I know that person is safe. They can sit up here and come to me, and I'm not going to freak out. Because just like we said about safe spaces, If I tell you, Kenny, like, I'm about to tell you something, like, but you can't tell nobody. If I have to give that disclaimer, why am I choosing you to tell the information to in the first place? I've already established that I trust you if I'm going to tell it to you, but for some reason it's built inside of us to be like, hey, I need to say something, but you can't tell nobody, or you can't, you got to keep it to yourself. Like, you're talking to this person because you know that they keep it to themselves. But it's just like, let me say it verbally so that we both have that understanding, even though we have that understanding. So some folks will bring their rage to you because they know that you know how to handle it. Not saying that you're solely responsible for tempering those emotions. They are also responsible for that, but they know that you'll calm them down. Because if you're set off, sometimes people like to keep those triggers because they like to see a person go crazy. I'm the kind of person who wants to de-escalate. You're at a 10, I need you at a 2. So if that means we needed to stop the conversation, you need to take a breath. Some people are piled up with so much going on top of this specific grief, they can't breathe. They physically can't breathe. Mentally, they can't breathe. How can they even think of anything else? How can they make a sound decision like what to put on today? How can they do that when they feel like they can't even breathe? Like, one more brick, God, I'm gonna die. Like, how do I navigate through this? How do I get out of this? How do I live this life knowing that this is still with me? And it's the tragedy or the process of going through it with when you know that your child has cancer, and depending on how aggressive the cancer is, again, that time, right? It's all this time. You don't want your child going through the through like the surgeries, or like the process, like, dealing with like all the medicines, or what it does to you and what it does to that little body. You know what it does to an adult body. So imagine your child's body, and then in the event, God forbid, that they don't make it to. So now it's like, it was such a streamline of sadness and sorrow, and now I have to carry this for the rest of my life. We have to stay vulnerable, and we have to stay persistent and give people time. We have to meet folks where they are at and be okay with that. Because there are days I just completely unravel. And there are days I completely isolate. Because in my mind, nobody cares about this. This is your thing. In my mind, people have other things going on. I'm not hitting my friends up and I know that I can text her, I can call her if I wanted to. In my mind, it's like, no, she has a family, she got this going on, and all the stuff that we don't talk about. I got it. And that's my toxic trait. Like, I got it. I'm gonna figure it out. But there's value in village. We need community. We need someone to lean on and love to lean into. And you don't have to lean into everyone and be disappointed. So that means you're just sharpening your discernment. Who do I need in this season? Who do I need in this moment? Bring them to me, or make the connection, so that way I'm not trying to navigate all these people too, because no one has time for that. So leaning into love and being that what you need will help you be as successful as you can be in the moment, because you won't always get it right. Even, like I said, even in our good intentions, we can still fall flat, but the heart is right if it is. So just being available.
Yeah.
And being honest about your availability. I do have the capacity for this. I don't have the capacity for that. And that's okay. So we just need to be more honest about where we are so that we can serve to the best of our ability.
Whew, I am loving this feedback. I am loving the responses. So many points to touch on again. Knowing yourself. And a lot of times when this is the hard part, you don't know who you are the moment certain grief seeps in. You said it earlier, your whole perspective changes. And so how do you even know yourself enough? And my recommendation for a lot of people is to go to your basics. Go to your basics. The things that give you comfort, the things that allow you to just be you in your space. And if that is simply, okay, I got up and I brushed my teeth intentionally, and I had some gratitude for brushing my teeth in that moment. sometimes it's just those very small moments of, I just need to brush my teeth because yesterday was rough and I can't even remember if I brushed my teeth because we had to run out the door to the hospital, or I had to run to do this, or I didn't get sleep all night because I was up with my child. Or your perspective changes with grief. And people are forever changed when they have grief cycles. And this is another piece that I don't think a lot of people understand is, if you haven't had a certain layer of grief yet, some people really don't understand. And so, granted, I think we all know we grieve in different ways, but I don't think people acknowledge it and show awareness to it. Because if you lose a job, you get laid off, and we know it's been a lot of layoffs, a lot of, whether people are fired or whatever the case. And let's not even get into if you have to keep calling off work or have FMLA and then you worried about your job with your kids. Yeah, you just don't know how to address life, because all these pieces have just shifted. Everything in life has shifted. Your own self-care, whether it's your child. And one of the things I know, I lost my niece at she was 16. She had just turned 16, and we lost her to a heart condition. They gave her 4 years, so that anticipated grief. And I'm pretty sure everybody know that anticipated grief. You just don't know when it's gonna happen, but you know it's gonna happen. But you're still hopeful, right? Everything changed. The way I addressed myself, because I was there physically with her, running to the hospital, running to the ER, carrying her to the car. I was barely 16 at the time, carrying her to the car to get her care. And so when we talk about the layers of grief, we also got to think about the other people, the adults, but also the siblings, the extended family. And then again, in the comments, we're talking about villages, and then some of the closest people disappear because they just don't know how to approach it. And I know that was me. I was grieving for a long time. That's how I got into mental health field, because I didn't know how to manage my grief. And I lost so many people back to back to back, kids. Lost my little cousin at 11. And I remember that day like it's yesterday, right? People don't understand how it affects, that ripple effect, and approaching grief. It's so taboo. And that's why I'm so glad we are able to have this conversation, because we need to normalize it. We need to let people know that this is understanding who are your safe people. Britt, you touched on that. How do we identify our safe people? The people that are available, the people that show up. And even then, your people may want to show up, but they don't know how to. It's okay to confront them about it. And I think that's another piece. We're afraid to say, hey, this is what I need right now. And if you can't give it, that's okay. Some acceptance. A lot of awareness and acceptance shift over time. And so another piece I want to tap into, just some rituals. Why rituals are helpful. It allows you to have some acceptance. It allows you to process emotions. Like, how do we process the emotions of grief? We actually have to have time and opportunity for it. Now, when you have anticipated grief, but you're grieving all the processes that have happened, like you said, it can just feel like a weight. It's heavy. It's uncomfortable. And so this is why rituals are so important, because then you have some type of sense of control. I don't know what's going to happen today, but I'm going to do my ritual. I don't know what's going to happen, but this is what I can depend on. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but these are the people I can depend on. So having rituals, having that community, having a comforting routine. If it is, I just oil my body up at night before I lay down, because I just need to feel moisturized and loved on. I got love on myself. And then expressions of your beliefs and values. This is the piece where I think a lot of people actually disappear, because they do value their people, but they don't want to mess up. They don't want to say the wrong things. They don't want to say, oh, shoot, are they going to think this of me if I say this? Are they, or what if I say this and then they don't want to talk to me no more? So I'm gonna just wait till the smoke clear, so to speak. But we know, like I said, grief is everlasting sometimes. It's ever evolving. But we get to learn so much about ourselves if we embrace it. So our last question, because we are in the last 10 minutes of our talk.
Oh, time flew fast.
Oh, yes. Because we kind of talked about it, but what does support look like with grief? And we touched on that. But when do we know we need to reach out to a professional? Right? When do we know that at this point it has reached a point, it has reached a head? When do we go to group therapy? When do we actually sit with, I need another layer of help? Because maybe my community, I don't have the community I thought I had. I thought I had the peer support because I talk to my friends all the time, but I bring this up and they go, right? So how do we know when it's just time to reach out to a professional and say, I need help?
I think some folks always know, but it's when you decide to actually do, right? It's like, I know I need to reach out to someone professional, but for now, I think I'm good, or I can handle it, or right now, or we start like, I can't afford it. I don't have the time for it. Again, even, they have BetterHelp, they have all kinds of different resources, but you still have to do some work as far as, like, again, consulting to find the right fit, like I said earlier. But even that, like, even though I know I needed professional help when that initial grief initially set in, I still need professional help for the grief, that all the things that I'm grieving prior to, because again, it's not just the loss of a person, it's any kind of transition going on. But then we create the rationale in our head saying, like, well, I don't know if my insurance covers it. I don't know this and this. And like, now I have to, even if I could afford it, I have to put this in a budget for maybe money I don't have right now. And even the free resources may not be completely what I need. In group therapy, now you want me to talk to strangers about what I'm going through, even though we might be going through the same thing. It feels laborious. It feels like extra labor. So folks would rather just not do until they're on the brink of hitting rock bottom. And someone's like, hey, you need professional help. But then here's a name and an email or number of contact. You talk to this person specifically, you let them know I sent you. Because if we're going to help folks, again, like I said earlier, that needle in a haystack, like in Milwaukee, 211 is not. And it's all these nonprofits and entities that are here to help provide human services. But these humans should not need these services if you're trying to go through that particular site, because it's just like walking into a building and not knowing where to go. And it's already overwhelming. I'm choosing to add another layer of being overwhelmed and overstimulated. I'm already running on fumes. That just the thought process, I know I need professional help, but the thought alone, it's just, I have nothing left in me. So unless you unless you just drop a therapist in my lap, or have somebody take my hand and navigate me, saying, because sometimes that's what it comes down to. We know we need the help. Just the thought of reaching out or seeking it can feel damaging, because you're already in the thick of it. So.
Because like help oftentimes, if you don't know, looks like a hurdle. And it's like, all right, instead of me getting what I need, I got to go through this, got to go through that. Now I got to jump over that. You know what? Forget it. I'm just done. And you disconnect from it. And for me personally, it was being okay with being able to go to a counselor and get help. Because you can have Christ and a counselor, and that does not mean you're crazy. That just means you need consultation. Like, it's okay to have both. There is so much conflict in different places, spaces, and environments that we have, we don't think we can have both of those. It's okay to pray and go get wise counsel. Bible says plans fail for lack of counsel. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's okay to get wise counsel. You don't have to have everything figured out. And conversations like this, I'm so excited that Jacob Way and Howard, like you all did this, because it helps remove some of the stigma associated with needing help, with needing support, with needing community, with being able to reach out. I'm extremely, like we keep saying this so oxymoronic, happy about having a grief conversation, because this is going to help people's lives change for the better, and realize that, you know, in my own grief, in my own suffrage, you don't have the monopoly on missing somebody. When people pass away due to health concerns or disease, you do not have the monopoly on missing that person. Other people can grieve. Other people can have feelings. Other people are entitled to feel how they feel too. And once you start to lean into your support and understand yourself better, you can then, even in the midst of your grief, begin to support somebody else. And I found that can bind us closer together instead of pull us apart. So that's really helped me. But I'm glad that the stigma, at least a layer of stigma, is being removed as it relates to how and what grief looks like.
Yes, thank you guys so much. And I just want to say I appreciate all of the information, the feedback, and suggestions. And I added Open Path Collective for anybody that needs it. It's a low-cost service for mental health services. They start from $30 a session. So, I mean, I don't know if you can get cheaper than that besides pro bono, but but I think that is a really good service for a lot of people.
It is. I use Open Path for my former therapist. It really is a great resource.
Good. And see, I didn't even know you used it. There we go. So we know somebody that has actually used it, and I really hope that you all take this information and understand that we need to continue these conversations. This won't be the last conversation about grief, of course, because we are ever evolving in grief. But I want to thank you all so much. I know I don't know what happened to Britt, but Kenny, did you want to have any last comments? Anything you want people to understand about grief, or any last comments?
You know what? Just that it is something that we will all at some point in stage in life go through. So if you get the opportunity, if you're given the chance, be a support, be a help instead of a hurdle, and make sure that you exercise compassion and care above all. And for the people that are going through grief, who have lost children to grief especially, I will be praying for you tonight and nights after, just to have a level of comfort and peace.
Thank you. In our last minute, Britt, do you have anything you want to share?
Yes. Hold on to joy. So there's grief, and then there's joy in the mourning, MOURNING. And so you'll mourn this process, but find those aspects where you can hold on to something, a moment to smile, an accomplishment. The small wins make a big difference, and realize like there is value in village, but there's also okay to take your time for yourself. Collect your thoughts. Like you're not on anyone's timeline. That journey is personal. And that you should be giving yourself as much grace on it as possible. And then for others, if you want to serve, stay open, stay willing, stay ready, and be honest about your capacity and how you can show up for others.
Yes. Thank you all so much. This is a great conversation. Please share it with anyone you all may know that needs this information next time.